mode. But the difference, sorry, like AI overviews. But the difference with AI mode, of course, is it's an ongoing chat. So AI overviews are just part of the search result. And if you want another one, you'd search for something else. You can't interact with them. You can't kind of iterate on them or get it to explore more. In a chat window like this, you can respond to the output and say, oh, tell me more about that, or actually I was looking for this instead, or whatever it is you want to know. There are links in AI mode, but in the early days, at least, it has proven to be rather reticent to actually link out to stuff. But I would stress that this is a rapidly developing bit of technology, and one result might look one way, a different result might give you something else and work differently. But here's an example where it's actually literally telling you what the links are without linking to them, and they're not the same as the ones on the right-hand side either. Point being, it is not going to be easy to get traffic from this kind of search result, which is fairly self-evident, I think, when you think about the nature of it, but that kind of seems to be the reality. Indeed, AI mode very much wants you to stay. Even when there are links in the output, like the names of the businesses in this particular example, it's a link, it's underlined, you click on it, what you get is the Google business profile information on the right-hand side. And yeah, there is a website link within that, but it's 2 clicks to get to the website when you might have assumed clicking on the name of the business will take me to their website. So as with many of the big tech products, they are trying to keep you on their site, in their ecosystem. They want your eyes on their stuff because that's how they make money. So anything they can do to retain that traffic, as it were, is what they're going to do. So that's what we see in that result there. Now, Google are rapidly evolving this stuff. In fact, I say coming soon. I think it's actually rolled out in the last week or so, elements of personalization and data visualization. So you'll see in this video here a request, compared to different baseball, I think they're baseball teams, to their win percentages. AI mode goes out, gets the data, and then draws the chart that you saw just there as it scrolled past, along with all the other information. Now, it hasn't extracted that chart from the content in its own right. It's got the data, and it's generated the chart from the data that it went and found. So that's quite different to just getting a graph that's an image on a web page. So we'll see that more and more. There's more and more elements of personalization. Google haven't been entirely clear about that, but you can imagine if Google has the data on you about what's in your inbox and what's in your Google Docs and what your YouTube viewing history is and all that kind of stuff, it's all going to be thrown into the personalization mix, which is going to have a very I suspect, marked effect on the nature of the output that you see for a prompt or a query, which could be exactly the same as somebody else's with a very different result. Now, the way that LLMs work, you will get a different output every time you query it, even with exactly the same wording. You get different stuff coming on the screen. But if you do it enough times, you'll see the patterns and so on. With personalization, that creates much more diversity within what the AI may include in the answer, or the way it might go and do the searches that actually generate the output that we're seeing. So we have that. Deep search. This is something which I think you'll certainly see in Gemini already. It's coming to AI mode, and you'll see there that's a very complex query to find information about summer camps for children. What you could just see in that video there was that it was going out and searching a whole bunch of different sites for a whole bunch of different search terms. So this is a complex, long query, not the kind of thing anybody would normally type into a traditional Google type of search. It's far, far too long and complex. A traditional Google search is, I want this piece of information. This kind of search is, here's a bunch of information, go and sort it out for me, and ultimately, I want you to tell me this thing. So they're providing you with details, age of child, how far away you want to be, things they want to be able to do, recommendations required, needs to be a camp, all this kind of stuff. It's gone and done all these different searches, and it's just kicking off 44 different searches from tens of different, with tens of different sources being pulled in from those searches. And then it's generated all of this output, tables of data, images, reviews from people, all that kind of stuff. This is the future of search. In fact, it's almost really the now of search, to be honest. And this is how people will be using this technology going forward. Some of you, I'm sure, are already doing similar with ChatGPT or Perplexity type searches. So AI mode, of course, is Google's response to that. You're also able to search live. Now, there'll be audio on this, and hopefully the audio will come across as well as the visuals.
What else should I do to make it stronger?
To make it stronger, consider adding more triangles to the design. Also, ensure a strong bonding between the popsicle sticks by using wood glue and clamping or taping the joints while they dry.
So what you've seen there is somebody take their phone out, pop on the video in the Google app, point it at something and say, how do I make this stronger? No context other than what's in the video shot. So the technology has obviously understood the spoken word. They've understood what it is in the image. And obviously the response that you had there is a way to make basically structures stronger by applying diagonal fixings to them. So, you know, that's incredible stuff when you think about the power of that. And it's exactly the same kind of search that you saw in the previous example, except this is the multimedia or multimodal version of that, where it's audio and video image coming together to create the prompt, as it were, the search, rather than a long written query. So pretty clever stuff. And something which is also rolled out, I think now, or certainly very, very soon, is the introduction of agentic capabilities. Now, if you were on Ann's webinar last week, you'll be very familiar with what agents are. If not, quickly, agents are kind of automated bits of AI software tasked with doing a job. And in the context of a Google search, that the starting point for this is the ability for Google to go and book tickets and make reservations for you and fill out forms with your details without you needing to visit the site yourself or be involved in that process. So they have this example on the video there where the request is to find 2 affordable tickets for this Saturday's Reds game in the lower level. Away goes Google, kicking off all those different searches, different websites, 15 different sites from 10 different searches it's done to try and get all the comprehensive options, pulls it together, gives you the output, and then says, right, well, the cheapest of these tickets, but the best value ones are these because the view's better and the closest to the infield is these. You hit that and say, which ones you want? Yeah, buy the seats, away we go. So the technology there is really that the search engine, if you want to call it that, the AI here has been able to go and do the job for you without you needing to go to that website. So presumably it uses Google Pay in that context, and Google has all your details. So Google is able to go and book the tickets for you at the push of a button from within the search results. And that's something that a lot of people think is going to be the way the web goes in many ways, that a lot of the visitors, if you want to call them that, to your website will in fact be AI agents doing jobs for people and fetching information or carrying out tasks rather than the actual humans themselves. Oh, there we go. Okay. Now, on the shopping side, this is AI mode being used for a shopping query. I'm looking for a cute travel bag. Actually, that's a pretty short query. Bang, here comes some options for you. And then, of course, this is a chat interface. So we can refine what we're looking for. Okay, here's some more information to help narrow down the selection to meet the needs that I have. And it goes away, does a bunch of searches again, and we see the answer and some suggested products. And if you read the answer bit on the left-hand side, you can see that it's understood the context of what you've told it, which is you're going to be traveling on public transport and you're going to somewhere where it rains a lot. So it's gone out and done its searches. It's understood the concept behind what you're actually asking, and it's pulled out products to match the need that you have on that basis. Very, very clever stuff. Now, then add in the agentic bit, which is to say from here that you want to buy this product, but you're not willing to pay that price. So you can track the price, and this is functionality Google has already. But if you layer on the agentic bit, it gets a little bit clever. So you say, right, maximum I'm willing to pay for this is $95. Currently it's $120. Some point in the future, you get a notification from Google on your phone. Oh, the price has dropped, and you hit buy for me, and off it goes. There it is. I've got it. Yeah. Do you want to buy it? Yeah. Oh, wait, of course, using GPay. Yes, there we go. It's been done. Whole point being, like the previous example with the tickets, that has all happened from your phone through Google, and you've never actually visited the website. And that's the nature of how agents can work in this particular context. So clever stuff. What does all that mean for us in the world of search? Well, the top of funnel marketing, if you want to call it that, is now a much harder thing to do in terms of trying to get people to a website, trying to do lead capture because they want a bit of information that you've got on that site, a report or whatever, because they're getting their answer straight from the search engines. And they can interact with it, they can pull more data, they can get it to go and fetch it from however many different sources and distill it for them. They don't need to come to your website anymore for those earlier stage research type queries that people do when they're going through the buying process, through the funnel. And so that top of funnel marketing is a lot harder in this context. It means, of course, therefore, that your web pages are the source rather than the destination. So in many respects, in the world of AI search, what you publish on your own site is as much to feed information to the tools that will actually display it to people as it is to actually have human beings look at those pages and read the content word for word. So it's more about feeding, providing the source and feeding it to these AI engines. And that means that performance measurement is going to be a lot harder. And this is something, of course, that other speakers will be talking about shortly. But there's no longer rankings in terms of position 1, 2, 3. You're not getting traffic anymore, certainly not in the same volume that you once were, because now all of those more informational queries, at least, are simply being displayed directly in the AI results. And so you don't get the traffic to measure, you don't get the ranking positions. How do you measure whether you're showing up in people's AI results or not, whether you're being cited, mentioned, etc., is very difficult to measure, much more so because not everybody gets the same result anyway. And different sites and different sources will be cited for the same query, at different points in time for different people. So very, very difficult to measure. And as AI generated content, and some of us, I'm sure, on the webinar are already doing this, you use AI to write content, you might edit it and do whatever you want to it, but ultimately a lot of what's getting published on the web is AI generated one way or another. And that creates a ridiculously large number of pages to be crawled, even bigger than it already is, and it grows faster than it already has done to this point. And so at some point, you have more content than can be crawled by anybody, even Google, and they have to start making harder decisions about what do we actually even bother to crawl, let alone index in the first place. So sites that don't have trust signals that tell the AI engines, yeah, this is a good source of information trusted by people, they might start to be ignored more than they already are. So how does all this work? Well, these AI LLMs, large language models, and indeed other types of AI model as well, they work usually on embeddings of some sort. And essentially that means that every bit of text in any document, web page in our world, in terms of documents, they're converted into a vector, which is kind of a 3D representation, numerically speaking, of relationships between information. If you read the AI overview about this, who better to ask than Google, what is a vector embedding? It gives you that numerical representation of data, and it captures meanings and relationships. So things have a distance in this. Distance is measured in numbers, and the distance tells you how closely related different things are within the whole sphere of knowledge, really. And it makes things a lot faster, because instead of dealing with text or having to parse that text when you're actually doing a search or retrieving information of any sort, you just look for numbers, and it's a lot quicker to look for numbers, and it's a lot quicker to calculate numbers that have already been prepared, rather than have to do it all from the raw material, as it were. And that's how these things can work so quickly. But they also make it easy for systems to understand relationships between things. And if you remember back to the days of 10 years ago or so, when Google announced RankBrain, that's what they talked about, this idea of things, not strings. Essentially, that's what they're talking about. So it's the shift from looking at text and really just analyzing the text in the way that human brains kind of read words and stuff, into we can create relationships, and the machine can understand and it can learn based on the way that these vector embeddings work. So you then end up with a very large database of these vectors, but as I say, it's very, very fast. So typically the embeddings just create the distances between them, and therefore the closest match tends to be the best result for whatever you're looking for. Possibly the more old school way of doing things, like BM25, TF-IDF, the term frequency, inverse document frequency. These are like old models. They go back into the 70s and 80s, which are more like matching keywords, matching bits of text to each other, which is a lot slower and less accurate way of doing it than having vector embeddings to begin with. But the vector embeddings aren't necessarily brilliant when there isn't a lot of data, because there's not many relationships. It's hard to understand, is that really that relevant just from the numbers? So sometimes, perhaps, we don't know for sure, there is an element of the old school text matching stuff going on as well, for when the vector embeddings aren't giving you a very clear steer on that. So within here, we have a knowledge graph. You'll hear people talk about that quite a lot. Google's talked about knowledge graph a lot over the years. And these are kind of the real world entities and the relationships between them. And it's a way to store information about things. Wikipedia is typically quoted as the knowledge graph that people would normally reference. And it's certainly something that Google's built its knowledge graph upon. We know that. But ultimately, you really have a number of different sources or ways of accessing and retrieving information here. So we think that there's maybe something called reciprocal rank fusion, where you basically take multiple lists of documents from different retrieval systems, and you kind of mash it up together and go, right, here is your single ultimate output of search results or output from an AI based on all this different stuff we've merged together. And that gives you essentially the source information for the answer that these AI systems generate, which is known as retrieval augmented generation, or RAG. And so you have all the ranked documents together. If you see people writing about this, they might term it the corpus. So basically, there's a whole process of retrieving information and deciding what you're going to base your answer on. So this kind of, almost think of it like a filtering system. Here's all the stuff that matches. What do you actually want to use out of all of this? That's what the reciprocal rank fusion is kind of doing. And then the AI LLM, as you might think of it, the ChatGPT kind of output, takes that information that's been retrieved and sorted, and then from that generates a response. So it's different to the original ChatGPT, if you remember when that launched, and people said, well, it's only good for data up to September 2021 or whatever it was, because it's been trained on that. Well, the training data, it teaches the system how to understand and produce content, all that kind of stuff. But with RAG, you're saying, right, well, use what you know about how to actually generate content and understand content and so on, but apply it to this piece of information. So in the world of search engines, that's not live, but it's very fresh indexed information that's coming back. And so that's how you then end up with the written word and the images pulled out and structured, the stuff that you've seen in the examples I've shown so far. Now, I did make a point a couple of times in those demos that Google has in the videos of how, when you were prompting it or putting in your query, it was going out and doing a whole bunch of different searches. That's a process known as query fan out. And if you use Perplexity, you can actually see that kind of it broken down in action, as it were. So the bit on the left-hand side here is me asking Perplexity, what is hair metal? List the best hair metal songs. And it's gone away and done a bunch of different searches. And each one of those little grey dots, if you can see those, that's telling you what it's doing and why it's doing it. So I am searching for information to understand what hair metal is, yada, yada. And then there are 3 different searches just for that part. Then the next part is I'm searching for the most popular and highly regarded hair metal songs. There are 4 searches for that. There's another 3 searches for the next one. That's the query fan out. So they are more in line with traditional kind of Google searches that we might all think of, but they're what you might call a synthetic query. It's not the actual human being using this who's put those in. They've been triggered and generated by the AI search system from the initial query. So the human query is, what is hair metal? This is the best hair metal songs. And that triggers a bunch of different searches of a search engine to pull that stuff out. And then it selects what sources from those search results it actually wants to use. And that's where we can see there's a sources tab, and it tells you reading here. So basically the reading bit is, I have selected from all the search results that I got for these searches, these are the sources I'm actually going to use to generate the output. So I've searched for hair metal. In case you're wondering, the image on the right hand side might look AI generated, but those of you not old enough to remember, this is what music looked like in the 1980s. Well, it did to me anyway. You see a four-necked guitar and you think, yeah, AI's gone mental here and generated a four-necked guitar. That is real. This is a gentleman called Michael Angelbatio, then of the group Nitro, these gentlemen here, and he does play a four-necked guitar. So go and look that up on YouTube if you want a bit of a laugh, or indeed to be impressed by that. So what kind of stuff happens in the fan-out kind of queries that we're getting here? So it would be related queries, things that are implicit in what you've looked for. So for example, if you've asked it for what is the best something or other, it might then use synonyms like highest rated, or in the context of what does best mean? Does best mean most affordable? Does best mean premium? You know, that kind of stuff. It depends what you've asked for. Comparative queries, comparing X versus Y, for example. It'll be looking at your more recent queries for context to understand more about what you're really looking for. Personalization, like I was describing before, rewriting your original query in different ways, the LLM just rewriting stuff. Entity expanded, so if you've asked for what is the best electric vehicle, it will know that a Tesla, a BYD, an MG, or whatever, those are electric vehicles, and it will be doing searches based on those specific brands because they're very closely associated entities. That will be done. There's all kind of ways that these queries could be triggered in different directions from your original prompt. Now, what we also know, part of this process is reasoning. And you kind of have reasoning chains, which are structured sequences of prompts to arrive at the answer. And actually, if you watch carefully, one or two of those Google videos that I had in before, you can kind of see the reasoning. It's well, I need this, and because I've got that, I then need this, and because I've got that, I then need this. That's the reasoning chain. So those are the intermediate reasoning steps. They inform all the different queries it's going to do and which sources should be chosen, and even what LLM should be used to generate the answer. Because if the right answer is text, then you get a text output, but maybe the right answer is an image generated, in which case a different type of LLM is going to have to generate the image for you, of course. Won't even be an LLM, I suppose, diffusion model. So, for example, you ask for the best electric SUV for long journeys, and the reasoning needs to understand, well, okay, long journeys, what's a long journey require? Oh, you need good range, and you're going to need to be in comfort because you're going to be in it for a long time. It's that kind of logic. And Google's got a good example of that in this here, and hopefully this will work because it actually had to be embedded from YouTube. So this is their demo of Query Fan. When's the best time to schedule an outdoor engagement photo shoot in a Boston public garden? Goes out and does all these different searches, like what light do photographers need for an outdoor shoot. It's picked stuff out from the knowledge graph, from the weather, and from the web, and it picks a bunch of sources from the web. And that happens for all those different queries that were triggered from that initial query about what's the best time. And it's pulled information back together. So we can see here, it's worked out, well, what kind of light is best. So what time of day is good for that. It's had to go and do a lookup for the weather, of course. So you can see it's pulling information from different sources of traffic, different sources of information, whether it's the web or its own sources like weather and knowledge graph stuff. Lots of different queries, all going out and doing that, and then refining and synthesizing the answer back through the LLM output. So it's clever stuff. So we think personalization, I've kind of touched on that earlier. Your past searches, what you've clicked on in the past, content interest more generally, what device you're using, where you are, what you've been doing with the Google products, all of that could go into the personalization. And then you might have different models creating the content that we see as the answers. And we know that there's something called pairs of passages being compared, basically pairwise ranking. So I've got two bits of information, which is the better one? Right, I'll pick that. And that kind of comparison of passages from your web pages chunks of text being played off against each other, which is the best part, which is the best answer for what I'm particularly looking for right now. That's what's going on in the selection of the information to be included in the output. So it's not easy to understand all of that, I appreciate, and pretty complex when you think about how you're actually going to do SEO. But the good news is probably a lot of what you're already doing is still going to be relevant and useful in the world of AI search. So if you look at Google's advice about ranking in their AI type results, everything on that list is pretty much what they've already been telling us for many years. Good experience, crawlability, content for people, all that kind of stuff. But what they do say is go beyond text for multimodal success. Point being, the AI systems can understand video, audio, images, not just text on a web page. And they make the point, measuring clicks from search, i.e. organic traffic, is not a good measure of success. Coded for, we're going to send you less traffic because of the way this stuff works, which we all know because it's really obvious. But there we go. That's what Google's saying. So what have we been doing at Vibrant Doors, which should continue to help us work? One is hub content or topical clusters, really. So information, structured, answering questions on a particular topic and clustered around the main page for that. So we've got lots of different information about bifold doors here, for example. Keyword research has told us these are the things people want to know, and we've created pages of information to match that using a long tail keyword research process. And in traditional search, that will help you rank better for your primary keywords. It'll pick up traffic higher up the funnel, and it demonstrates topical expertise. All of these things are important for traditional search. Some of them are important for AI search. And it earns links in some cases. Now, interestingly, we don't think links may be quite as important in the world of AI search, but citations will remain important. So being mentioned and referenced within the context of your topical area is definitely an important thing for AI search. So we've had good success with that, and I don't see why we're going to stop wanting to do that just because AI search is a bit different. We make sure the pages belong to their parents, so we have a hierarchy in the URLs. Yep, this is a subpage of this section kind of thing. Lots of internal linking between the pages within that topical cluster. We have to refresh it every so often because it needs to be accurate and complete. And it's got to be well presented for people because they will, some of them, ultimately visit there. Arguably, not quite as important in the world of AI search, but nevertheless, right now, it's important that if people click through, they see something that looks good. We've optimized our content for natural language processing and tried to include entities, something that Dixon will be able to tell you a lot more about than I can. This tool is called Surfer SEO. Essentially, it helps us analyze our competition and other pages that rank for our keywords versus our own content and optimize it using their guidance of this entity's missing. You've not mentioned this very much, that kind of stuff. That's worked really well. I won't try and explain that in great detail, but one tip here is if you want to optimize for entities, ask an AI. They're built on the idea of entities and association of those. And these things called entity attribute values show you the information you should include for a particular entity. Here, for example, I've asked Gemini, what are the entity attribute values for bifold doors? And it's given me what the attributes are for that entity and what the expected or like potential values might be. So I'd look at our content and say, do we mention all these things? Do we provide this information, every one of these on the page? If not, we should talk about that because search engines and AI tools expect those things to be on the page if it's about that subject. So it's not terribly complex, really. It's quite straightforward. Okay, so I'm going to stop talking very shortly because Ann's flicked back upon.
Yeah, I've just, if you could just finish at the entities part and not go into the creative content because
no, that's fine. That's fine. So, there's plenty to think about here, and I think when I hand over to James, he's going to tell you more about the idea of optimizing for these kinds of things and what the differences might be. So probably a good point for me to stop talking about those things and hand over to you, James.
Okay, well, thank you very much, Ian. I'm going to disappear again. If you'd like to just share your camera. I think people have been answering the chat as they go on, but you'll see that the reason we put Ian first is because he's introducing lots of concepts around entities, what AI overviews are. So that's going to allow James to talk about how we can optimize for generative search. So if you share your screen now, James, that would be great.
Sure thing. Okay, so here we go. I'm just going to share this specific window over here like this. So if everyone could let Anne and people know in the chat if you can see the presentation. I'm pretty sure I've done that right. But yeah,
I can see it, so I think you're fine.
Fantastic. Okay, so I'm basically going to speak a little bit about GSO, or Generative Search Optimization. What is it? Why should we care about it? And potentially how we might measure and stuff like that as well. So first of all, just a little bit about me, a little bit about myself. I am a technical SEO enthusiast, and I've been working in SEO circa 2009. So that's about 16 years of experience. I also dabble with Python as well. So in one of my earlier projects, I was experimenting with how to generate prompts at scale for product descriptions, and then built a Python script which sort of sent all of those prompts off en masse to OpenAI's API and returned a bunch of content, which was kind of an interesting project to do. I'm also a search engine land author as well, so you can see my link down there. Obviously, you know, if you have access to your web browser, you can just type in James Allen SE Land or James Allen Search Engine Land, and my profile pops right up, and you can read some of my posts and some of the stuff that I've been writing about. But yeah, one of my passions is kind of experimenting with AI automation specifically for SEOs, kind of how to transform data and documents into other documents to save time and stuff like that as well. And I've also recently begun playing with AI agents such as Mind Studio and N8N as well. So what is GSO and how is AI changing search? So GSO stands for Generative Search Optimization. So essentially, whether a user is using a search platform like Google, or whether they are using an AI platform like ChatGPT, Claude by Anthropic, Perplexity is another one. Maybe if you're doing coding, then it might be Sonar, which I think is built by the same guys from Perplexity and stuff as well. It starts with a prompt which you enter. So you enter a prompt which in a way is kind of similar to a search query because you're querying information. And the query that you enter may be for navigation. So like, I want to visit this website, or it might be commercial or transactional. And yeah, as I've said, it could also be purely informational as well. And Ian has shown some really good examples of that previously. So AI will then attempt to answer or respond to the question. And sometimes AI might highlight a relevant brand or a product or a website. And quite often when AI does this, you know, if you say, I want, you know, this type of a product and, you know, this is the kind of price range that I want, you know, especially if you're using something like ChatGPT, it will then initiate web searches, it will go away, and it might come back to you with a number of Amazon links and stuff like that as well. So what GSO is about is attempting to get your brand referenced by AI. So generative search optimization, essentially trying to enter the LLM or large language model, and also make your website kind of more attractive for RAG queries, which AI performs as well, which Ian spoke about that in detail. So I don't really need to go over that again in masses of detail. But essentially, sometimes when you process a query or a prompt through an AI platform, what then happens is the AI realizes that that information isn't necessarily contained within its training data or its LLM. So it launches a RAG or retrieval augmented generation query, and it will go and do a search and try and pull in extra information. So GSO is kind of about how can we enter the large language model, but it's also about, you know, how can we make our site more attractive to AI crawlers when they perform RAG queries as well. So elements of generative search optimization, there is obviously the pre-training data or the LLM, which Ian has kind of covered in quite a lot of detail. So when you're speaking with an AI chat assistant, there will be a vast, you know, terabytes large, maybe even larger than that at this point, large language model, which contains lots of information. So I think Ian kind of basically referenced the fact that there's lots of kind of like linguistic or language corpus data inside of an LLM, which basically teaches the AI how to respond to you in English and which words kind of go together and how to communicate. And sometimes there can also be lots of news and information and articles and stuff in the LLM as well, so that it knows a little bit without having to initiate RAG. And then there's obviously retrieval augmented generation, or RAG, which is where the AI then makes a critical evaluation and says, what I've been asked here is perhaps about a very recent event, and that event isn't part of my training data or my LLM. And due to this, I'm going to perform an actual search and go out onto the web and see if there's any more up-to-date information to incorporate into my response. And then also on the user or marketer side, there are the queries and prompts. So what prompts or questions the users ask. Use of SEO tools as a proxy for common prompts. And then mentions in the responses, which I've already referenced as well. So it might be that in the AI response, it actually provides a link based on RAG to certain products on your website or something like that. It might also be that the AI doesn't necessarily link to you, but might mention your brand. And that might be more common. So, for example, if you were to process a query that was something more like, which are the best car insurance companies in the UK, specifically for classic car insurance and stuff, in that instance, it might be more likely that the AI, instead of supplying links, would just supply text and would, give you a number of different car insurance company and would tell you some of the reasoning why it thought that those were specifically the best UK car insurance companies for classic car insurance or something like that. So GSO, or Generative Search Optimization, what changes can you make to increase your presence in query responses? So there's the query or the prompt, which is processed by the user, and then there's the response from the AI, which may include links, it might not include links, but how do you kind of enter those responses? And that's kind of what GSO is all about. So I thought it would be useful to outline the difference between GEO, which is more commonly cited within our industry currently. So there's a number of articles on Search Engine Land and stuff talking about GEO, and how that kind of sits against GSO, which is kind of our own acronym. So GEO is slightly broader, and it really focuses on kind of more broadly entering the LLMs of various AIs, AI assistants. So the LLM training data for OpenAI's various models, for Anthropic's various models, etc. So GEO isn't necessarily related to search or prompt-based queries in a granular way. Although the term is kind of being used in that way, and it sometimes can be, content about GEO can often be about GSO as well. But GSO it's really more about the kind of granular prompts and queries which are processed, and the responses, and entering those responses, which, yes, that might involve entering the LLM or training data, but there are probably other techniques as well. And obviously I mentioned that one thing that AI does is perform all of these RAG, or retrieval augmented generation queries. So in addition to entering the LLM, it's also more about making your site more attractive to AI crawl bots, where they perform RAG executions and stuff like that. So GSO isn't exclusively limited to search-driven AI responses like Google AI overviews, but does retain a kind of a higher focus in this area. So it kind of sits, I guess, kind of halfway between GEO and SEO in that sense. And so if your aim is to ensure that your company is represented in AI-generated product copy or internal knowledge tools, then that is that's essentially going to be kind of a broader practice, and that's more related to GEO. So if you're just saying, I just kind of generally want to enter a large language model and make sure that my company is sort of generally more cited in general. That's more related to GEO, whereas GSO is more specifically related to the granular queries that people are processing and tracking those and, you know, working out how to enter those spaces. So obviously this is something I wanted to touch on: search first GSO versus AI first GSO. So in terms of generated responses which AI can provide, there are kind of a couple of different models. So obviously large search platforms like Google tended to first adopt a model where a traditional search query was processed, which tends to be shorter. And then essentially, if the query seems like it would benefit from an AI response, then the AI facilities are kind of initiated, the large language model is queried, any RAG is performed, and then AI is injected inside of search. Although, as Ian has shown you, with AI mode, which is set to essentially replace Google's AI overviews, that's going to kind of change and flip the other way around. And if you look at the right-hand half of this screen as well, you can see that there is a separate example given from ChatGPT. And ChatGPT works exactly the other way around. So you will write a typically slightly larger or more detailed prompt rather than a standard search query. And then if the AI decides that it essentially doesn't have all of the knowledge that it needs to respond from the training data inside the LLM, then the AI then may initiate a search, which is kind of exactly the opposite way around. So you know, larger search platforms like Google, they're kind of using the infrastructure that they already have and then triggering AI. Whereas AI first platforms like ChatGPT, they're leading with the AI technology and then separately initiating searches. And I think that that is going to end up being the future. And as Ian has kind of discussed in his presentation as well, you know, Google's AI overviews are set to be replaced by AI mode, and AI mode is kind of a more AI first interface, if that makes sense. And we've got a couple more examples here as well, which show the same kind of pattern. So essentially performing a traditional search on Bing this time instead of Google. And you can see that for this particular query, Bing then decided this would benefit from some kind of AI overview. So the search came first, and then the AI generated response came afterwards. Whereas Claude, which is more similar to ChatGPT, which has been built AI first rather than search first, again works the opposite way around, where a more detailed prompt is initially written by the user, and then searches can essentially be triggered from there. And that's kind of like the jumping off point for the RAG data. So where the LLM is basically understanding that it doesn't necessarily have all of the most up-to-date data in its LLM or large language model. And so it then performs a RAG query, which in this case is a search query. And it goes out and it searches the web using its own bots and its own technology. And it pulls back certain information as well. So just one thing that I thought was important to mention is basically how search and AI are interconnected. Because obviously both search and AI platforms, what they want to do is they want to be the one source that we go to answer all of our questions and queries and do everything for us. So Google, who are, in my opinion, still a little bit behind, they are still in some regions of the world, like the UK, operating a search first model with AI kind of being an afterthought. Although, as Ian has said, that is due to change soon very radically. Whereas a lot of the AI based platforms like Claude and, you know, Perplexity and ChatGPT, they're kind of on the front foot because they're starting with an AI first platform. Which has kind of given Google some catching up to do. So how quickly they're able to do that, or if they're able to close that gap at all, is something that remains to be seen. So another differentiation as well, SEO versus GSO. So SEO is just the broad art and practice of undertaking various tasks with the ambition of acquiring more traffic and conversions for your website through certain optimization tasks. So some of that involves stuff like link building, and there's also technical SEO, which aims to modify the technical code base of your website to make it more easily crawlable for search bots, so they don't get lost in weird little cul-de-sacs of parameter URLs and, you know, infinitely recursive nesting URLs and stuff like that, so that it drives Google to the main kind of fresh new content on your site so that you get more traffic from Google. And this is an art and practice which has been around for some decades, I'd say kind of evolved out of the information retrieval or IR era, which was quite a long time ago now. And so, yeah, that's basically what SEO is, whereas GSO is kind of more focusing on the future. And yes, obviously, it still aims to kind of gain more traffic from search engines, but specifically with a view to the evolving technology and AI responses that those platforms are going to be deploying in the very near future. So if you look at the images on this particular slide, if you look at the image to the sort of bottom right at the front, that is kind of traditional search results with the traditional blue link list that we're all used to seeing. And that is more where your SEO techniques are deployed. And if you look at the image, which is slightly further towards, well, I would say it's behind, so it's towards the left and top of the slide, that is showing kind of a similar or the same search query, but instead where Google is injecting AI overview results. So SEO is more about, you know, where Google are still using traditional link lists. It's more about kind of invading those spaces and getting listed there. GSO is more about when Google initiates an AI response or AI overview, how do you enter that list of links which the AI may choose to deploy or not. So essentially, a lot of that is also due to change. And again, you know, going back to what Ian has been saying about AI mode specifically, obviously that's going to be, you know, even more of a radical departure from search results than the current AI overviews deployment, which we're seeing in the UK. So, and one other thing that I'd also like to point out as well, so this direction isn't actually new to search overall. So Google have been moving away from, or I should say, have been attempting to move away from lists of web links as a kind of output format for the user and towards providing just the answers that we want to see, since even before the AI revolution. So previously, if we go back to about 2014, so just over 10 years ago, Google would actually algorithmically generate results known as featured snippets, where, you know, Google would consult their knowledge graph and the kind of vectorized information inside of that, working out which entities were related to which other entities, which was kind of extended through Google Hummingbird and stuff like that. But Google were capable of algorithmically attempting to directly answer a question without AI. So there was some, I think, involved in this. There was like a little bit of AI, like some minor natural language processing was involved in this. But it's not the same as the large and powerful AI platforms and responses that you're seeing now. And obviously during that time, and I remember this back in 2014, everyone was saying, oh, you know, this is going to destroy search because, you know, knowledge panel is going to be the knowledge panels and the featured snippets. They're just going to become the search results. And, you know, although in the case of knowledge panel, Google still did often provide a citational link, obviously, because people got the answer that they needed in the content. Quite a lot of the time, they weren't clicking on that link. And there was absolute uproar at the time. Back in 2014, but in the end, search kind of adapted, and the practices that we used adapted to an environment with fewer clicks from results. And yeah, this is, in my opinion, what's happening now with AI. It's just kind of a continuation of the same story. And that story is that Google wants to be like an information engine rather than necessarily a search engine that lists loads of links. It wants to be the provider of all the information that we need, and it wants to remain the homepage of the web. Will that still be the case in 2 years' time, 5 years' time, 10 years' time? We don't know. It depends how Google performs against OpenAI, against Anthropic, producing tools like Claude, which are highly effective. And even though Google has obviously a huge, from its search legacy, Google has a huge cache of a large chunk of the web to draw upon. And that's a huge amount of data and information. And it should theoretically mean that Gemini and Google's project and Google's AI product is the best, but it's not what we found. What we found is that, whilst Google's AI has tremendous amounts of data to draw upon, obviously, drawing upon the web as a source is a double-edged sword, because there's also lots of kind of misleading information on the web as well. And those AI platforms and models which have focused more on curating their large language model, like OpenAI's various platforms, like Claude from Anthropic, even though they have less data to draw upon, quite often they're actually able to generate superior results because they have a better brain. So, one thing that I would say is, don't count your chickens before they hatch. And it's not necessarily true that Google is going to remain in a dominant position. They certainly could do. And the AI mode, which Ian was showing off earlier, is extremely impressive. But it will be interesting to see how other organizations respond to that. So GSO, why care? Google is continuing to move away from lists of links. And also, Google may be in a position where they begin to lose dominance as other platforms like Claude, Perplexity, ChatGPT become more popular. But regardless of the winner of the AI arms race, which is happening right now, it's certainly true that users will still be processing queries and prompts to a provider, and that provider, or those numerous providers, will be providing AI responses. And that's where all of the traffic is going to be. So we need to enter those responses in order to stay competitive as businesses. I'm preparing for GSO, so more research, and this is probably something that's more on our side, like the side of agencies that you're working with and research companies. It's up to us to kind of perform more research to understand the exact techniques to enter AI responses. And that's going to lead to new and different activities. Now, as Ian was saying earlier, a lot of the techniques that you use to currently enter AI responses, such as being cited in certain places and such as structuring your data in a clean and lean manner that is easy for a mechanical mind to understand. In a way, lots of those techniques don't change immediately. But I believe that over time, as AI becomes more advanced and starts becoming more critical, in the same way that we would react to past Google updates like Penguin and Panda and Mayday and Caffeine and Hummingbird and all of that good stuff, there will be updates to AI RAG crawlers so that they're not pulling content which is spammy, and we're going to have to adapt to that changing kind of environment, if that makes sense. And then finally, we must learn to monitor and measure our references within AI responses. And that is where I believe Mathias is going to pick up and talk a little bit about his platform, Rank Scale AI. And that's it.
Thank you so much, James. That was a brilliant segue between Ian's and Mathias's talk. So what we've got next for you, Mathias, if you want to get online and share your screen, so that we can make sure that's handed over smoothly. If there's any question for James in the chat, please carry on asking questions. So Mathias is going to talk to us about his tool that he's developed called Rank Scale. So I'm going to disappear and pass over to you. Thank you, Mathias.
Thank you so much. So actually, I'm going also to talk a bit about GEO and also the citation part. And I will quickly push a plug, also on rank scale. But my main topic is, a bit about the history and also how it came to rank scale and how important citations actually are. So yeah, maybe first a bit about myself. I'm not coming from the digital marketing field or SEO field at all. So it was more like I was imagining myself like that, like last summer, because I was a CSO at a startup in a niche, deep tech startup, and I was, always having side projects. I have a sweet tooth for that, but I have a very strong software development and engineering education as well. So after all that, and being the CSO in the startup, also responsible for the marketing, I was looking to actually rank in Perplexity with our website. So I built our website. I wanted to be in there because we were so niche that no Google search actually was able to find us with 2 keywords. So with that, I found to actually rank in Perplexity, I found a big black box. So there wasn't even a name for that. As we have today, like we saw in James' presentation, we have a couple of abbreviations for it, but at that point it was just a big black box. And I tried to gather as many resources and studies and papers as possible in order to get our brand, our company mentioned in Perplexity back then. And I was already playing with AI engines a lot. So for me, the go-to engine was Perplexity at that point because it had the web search. So after all this and a couple of weeks later, I thought, well, it worked. We were actually ranking a little bit, at least we were ranking in Perplexity. We were in the responses. So I thought it would make sense in order to let other people also benefit from it, to do an MVP, grade, scrape and mark down a complete website or a landing page and run it through an AI algorithm with a specific rule set and specific prompt behind it, and also the training data based on all the resources I found at that point, and provide like a report and a scorecard to give some guidance and inspiration in this super black box in order to know, okay, where are my gaps? How do LLM crawlers actually see my website, and how to improve it actually? So this was the first point, or the first part where I wanted to start. And while doing this and sending it also to our former colleagues and friends and so on, I kind of really went into the rabbit hole, because I also asked myself, okay, how do we measure all this? Like James also asked, like, how do we measure and monitor this visibility like over time? And that's when I really went into the full addiction. So I spent then every minute and every night next to my full-time job on that topic. And that's where actually RankScale started off. And we launched softly for test users in January. And actually last week we went live publicly, completely open to the public. And I'm super happy also to announce that here. So, but maybe one step back. By the way, this is how my friends imagined me at that point, because I was only working all the time. But this was how I imagined me. I was tired. I loved my coffee machine. But I was really pumped with dopamine, because it was like Lego. It was building something, and it's still a lot of fun to do so. So the start. I mean, you know that in 2023 we had ChatGPT already. It had a high public attention in 22. It was used wildly, but it didn't have that much of a marketing relevance, because it had a training data cut off. There was a long feedback loop in order to get into this training data somehow. So for us, or for you as a digital marketeers, it was not highly relevant. The only thing that maybe was at the forefront at that point was Perplexity, since it already had the web search, but the adoption was not that high yet. So we were like, yeah, it's nice, but it's more or less not for AI or for search. 2024, we see that in November, for example, ChatGPT introduced the web search RAG features, where it pulls the web data and synthesizes it with the training data and pulls it and influences the response with it, and gives you also the results. And at the same time, others started to do this, and they pull the data from Google, from Bing, from Brave Search. And we were like, okay, this is still classic SEO, right? We just have to be in the search results to be in the AI search. Clear, right? So we were like, this is fine. 2024, fast forward, we see immediate rise of AI referral traffic. And you all know this, since beginning of this year, it's going crazy. You know, LinkedIn is full of it, and I'm not even I dare to open LinkedIn. It's for me, it's full of AI search, of course, but you know, there is a shift going on. There's a big wave in regards to AI search. I mean, that's the reason you're here. And what we see is that the referral traffic, it rises almost 63% of all the websites worldwide. They already receive AI referral traffic. Nowadays, more than 1% of the whole traffic of the websites on average are from ChatGPT. And we see that it's growing very fast. So here, for example, the friends from Durable, they saw an increase of over 1,400% from ChatGPT referrals since October. It's now their third largest customer acquisition channel, actually, and this is completely crazy. So we are getting suspicious now. So something's happening, and we should adapt. On the contradictory, the counter effect is due to AI overviews. I mean, we see this. We have an increase in impressions, but at the same time, the decrease in click-through rates. We have ChatGPT and introducing shopping, directly leading to the people with high intent to the buying page. We have AI mode coming up, doing the same, having various features, having personas. All these things are happening like at the very moment. And this means we have to adapt. Something's happening. Many people are in panic mode, specifically maybe clients, but we have to adapt to GEO. SEO is not dead, but we have to bring it into our channel selection. So what are the challenges in generative engine optimization? What are the key takeaways? So as we heard also from James, we have an evolution of keywords. Nobody is looking, for example, if they have a cat that has some tummy problems, nobody is looking like for vet Vienna in ChatGPT, but most probably they will put in a key phrase like, you know, my cat has tummy problems lying on the side. I'm located in Vienna in the 22nd district. Where should I go? What should I do? At the same time, we have the persona influence, like Ian also mentioned it. We have profiles on each of these AI engines, not only AI mode, but also ChatGPT registered users, pro users, and so on. After days, weeks, months of usage, they form like a profile of yours. So we will not necessarily have the same results for phrases or for prompts for one or the other. So this is a challenge, as is also the volatility of the LLM responses. We have volatility regardless of the profile or if they are registered or not. If you like a fire of two different prompts, you will get two slightly to majorly different results out of it. That means that the brand is mentioned or is not mentioned. Citations are used, or web sources, specific ones are used or are not used. And this is pretty difficult to measure manually. So you have to find some way to automate things to average it out. Also, LLMs today, they are pretty influenceable and spammable, as we found out with various experiments, and also other ones found out. They are not, how to say, especially LLMs that are not Google-based, they are not checking if the website they are actually citing is fully authoritative. They are more or less checking, okay, are there enough similar websites or similar content? And they are also prone to use, for example, listicles or top 10 lists pretty easily. That means it's influenceable. And I can leverage on that at the end, because we also did a Perplexity experiment there where we were able to actually change the content of the response by changing the content of a citation. So how to optimize actually in AI search? So in a super nutshell, it's about, as we heard also, website content. We have to enhance our existing content with tools like Surfer SEO or other tools. YKai will give you the foundation of how you actually presented in the AI, but it comes down to we have to enhance our existing content to AI-friendly language. What does this mean? That does, I mean, you heard it once before, I bet. Natural language, question and answer styling, all these things. Also avoiding any client-side JavaScript, since the basic crawlers that are not from Google, they're not able to render that. They're not able to crawl it. And what we also found out that works pretty well is if you create specific landing pages for intended queries. So, for example, if you are looking for if you are a construction business in a specific area or a specific region, it would really make sense to bring up landing pages that have the query in their URL with a dash in between, like, for example, construction business in Philadelphia. And that's a landing page. This helps a lot in order to bring people that are looking for that one to your landing page, and also to bring LLM crawlers to take the content they find in this page and bring it up to their response. Little tip. Also, classic SEO. It still remains crucial. It's super important to be in the web search listings. We will see that. I mean, more than 60% of the AI overviews results and citations, they are also, or can also be found in the top 10 SERP lists. And then citations. Citations, to me, they are the gold pot, the honey pot, so to say. They are super important, because if you want to optimize for AI search, you have to make sure that you have, or you are mentioned in the highly authoritative or weighted citation sources, which could be blogs, news, review sites, social media, Reddit, for example. Because if you are mentioned in there, there's a high likelihood the LLM, it picks up your name or your brand name, your persona, whatever, and brings it up into the response. So I'm focusing now on the citations. Why are they important? Well, it's not about backlinks anymore. It's just about pure text, raw text mention, because the AI picks it up. So there doesn't have to be any link behind it. We learned in a study we recently did, James and I, for Search Engine Lens, that the highest visible brands actually have the highest amounts of earned citation references. What does this mean, earned citations? It means that third parties, not our own brands, they are mentioning us in their content. Could be blog, Reddit, etc. Various different categories. And the more of these are present, the more of this the LLM can find in their web search data, the better, the higher the visibility could be. So as said before, more than 60% of the top sources in the AI overviews are from the top 10 SERP. On the right side, you see, by the way, the correlation between those two. So the share of citations on the left side and the visibility score on the x-axis. So we also found out that there are differences in citations, or in the searched or in the web results between the AI engines. So not every AI engine pulls the same citations. So we have to understand that some AI engines, they look into different categories. So if you look here, for example, you can find this in a very much detail in the link that James just shared. It's our article. We see that different AI engines, they quote and they get the information from different categories. So we see, for example, that GPT goes strongly into wiki pages, or that Gemini goes into affiliate very much. And also all of them do blogs a lot, news a lot, and so on and so forth. So you have to be aware of how, depending, of course, where you want to rank, which categories are important for those AI engines. Also, we see after a couple of runs and looking at the results after, for example, 20 runs or 20 runs of the same queries. So what we did here, we came up with around 100 queries or 80 queries from B2C to B2B, and also mixed them. And we, at scale, at bulk, we shot them to the AI engines and analyzed all the results. And we found out that for the same queries and for the same categories, different AI engines, they lean into specific domains. So here, for example, AI overview, most of the responses in B2C was Reddit. Most of the responses in B2B queries was LinkedIn and QualitySec. This differs with Gemini, for example, and differs with ChatGPT, and differs with Perplexity. So knowing for your queries and for your topics where the most weighted citations come from is highly relevant. not only, so what we can do, or how can we come up with this? So for different queries, we see here, for example, AI overviews, and this is out of the rank scale citation analysis after 20 runs in this case. We can see for the same query that here, for example, Cloud Zero domain was much more heavy weighted than at the last point, youtube.com. So this you would never know if you just like put in one prompt in your AI overview and check out the citations that come back. This you only know if you do it at scale. And as soon as you know, for example, top 3, top 5 domains and sources here, you are able to find ways to, maybe if it's a blog page or news page, to collaborate with them, and by that get mentioned in the content, and by that get into AI rankings pretty fast. And we don't only see this in AI overviews, we also see this in Gemini, for example, for best everyday fragrances. Here we see even that there are different weightings for the domains. We also see, for example, in GPT-4o, if we look into the URL, not only domains, even on the URL level, unique URL level, we also see weightings as well. So we can directly identify, okay, which citations actually synthesize the results for my topic, for my query. And this could be easily done with rank scale. So addressing the GEO challenge. So what were my problems back then when I started rank scale, and what are still the same problems today? So how to get a big picture of a brand, a website, a client's visibility, like from a snapshot point of view in AI engines, which web sources drive the answers, so what you see before, which are heavily weighted. How is my brand reputation and sentiment in AI answers? So I want to know, for example, in which directions does the sentiment lean, in negative, positive, or neutral keywords? And I also want to know which citations and sources actually drive this sentiment keyword. So if there, for example, is pricing coming up, a lot of the time there's a negative keyword. We will see this in rank scale, for example. We can click it and we can see, okay, this was the reason, this is how we talked about it in the very result, and this was the citation that led to it. Also, we want to identify and track competitors and want to know the same things we want to know for our own brand, but also for the competitors, to actually compare them side by side. And this is, of course, a shameless plug here. That's what we answer with rank scale. That was the whole idea behind it, to develop rank scale as an AI rank tracker, but also a bit more to give you an answer to all these questions at a scale. So what is rank scale? Actually, it's on the main part, it's an AI rank tracker for performance tracking. So it queries the different AI engines, AI overviews, ChatGPT, GPT-4o, Perplexity, Mistral, what else? Anthropic Cloud, with and without web search. So you can actually do an A/B testing with that. You can activate or deactivate it. We are not only doing API calls, we also directly analyze the results a normal user has in his chatbot graphical user and interface. So we're doing all of that as a hybrid mode. And soon enough, we will also integrate AI mode, for example. And what you see here is like the dashboard where you can drill down into your topics, which is like a bucket full of search terms or search queries. You can drill down into specific search queries. You can drill down into regions, AI engines, and you can see the performance over time for various metrics like visibility, how many mentions, how many citations were pointing to us, how often we were in the order of appearance in the top 3, and so on and so forth. It takes half an hour only to describe this one, but I go quickly through it. What we also do is competitor benchmarking. So all these metrics can be compared against all the competitors that came up. So this is just a list view. There's also a side-by-side view. You can do a deep, as you just saw, a deep citation analysis. So we can really go down into the rabbit hole, analyze the citations, analyze their categories, analyze where they came from, when they actually showed up the first time, how many unique URLs are pointing to specific brands, how many domains are pointing to brands. We can check out which queries led to that. So it's really super drillable, and it's unmatched in terms of the in-depth data you can actually get out of it. What we also do is, as said, the sentiment analysis, where we analyze all the brands and also our own ones for various sentiment keywords. We create then word clouds. We create a radar chart where you easily see in which direction that do the responses lean for each AI engine being trained, being web grounded data, so we can easily identify any brand reputation problems and also track where they came from. And at the very least, our MVP has also been further developed, and we have the website audit function with all the guidance and inspiration on how to actually improve specific landing pages or websites for LLM crawler visibility as well. And all these stuff is also exportable into CSV, Google Sheets. Soon we have also a full API behind it, and it's meant for agencies and in-house team as well as for individuals. So you can track multiple projects at once. Here on the left side, you see here's, for example, the project list. We can also share our workspaces, so you can have various people working on the same workspace and so on. And what we also do, since we are also scraping and analyzing the GUI of AI overviews, ChatGPT and Perplexity, we can analyze the shopping feature. And this will be heavily improved in the future. It's currently in beta, but we want to analyze that very heavily. Also, then when we have AI mode available, in order to provide you, if you're coming from e-commerce, a visibility dashboard on products and as well as ratings, prices, and so on and so forth. So, thank you very much. From a timing point of view, if we have still time, I could quickly go into some further topic, but I think I'm on time, right, Anne? I don't see the timing yet.
You can have, if you just wanted to demo for 2 minutes,
No.
or
Just wanted to
Dixon
do
go,
the
and then we have a panel at the end. Would it be? I think we probably prefer to do a bit of a panel at the end. I think that's
okay. Then let's do the panel, and if I might, we can jump into the experiment we did with Perplexity later.
Okay, Dixon, do you want to share your screen then?
Yep, absolutely. Okay, thank you. Right, I will.
Mathias, you'll need to stop sharing yours.
Yep.
You found the button. It's top
yeah,
left.
Share screen. Yeah, there we go. Share screen.
Thank you.
Window. That one.
Thank you, Mathias. That was really useful.
So hopefully,
I think we're okay for time, because if you take 20 minutes, that'll give us about 10 minutes to have a discussion at the end.
Yeah, great. Okay, can you see my screen, guys?
I can see the sharing bit, but you haven't actually shared your slides yet.
Oh, okay.
You might have extended screen or something.
I do have extended screen, so okay,
it's not on the one that we're on. What you may also find is you won't be able to see the chat while you're sharing.
Yeah, that's okay. I won't be able to pay attention to two things at once anyway.
Yes, it's very distracting if you take notice of the chat.
So it's trying to share that screen, is it? Entire screen. There we go. Let's do that one then. Better?
Yes, perfect.
Okay, great. So thanks a lot, guys. So I'm moving on from what Mathias was saying. We also have a product slightly different angle and take on things. I think the talks so far up to now have been very, very interesting. And I'm very, I've got to go back to the start, sorry. Very much aware that we had these talks live at Epic 25, and it's interesting to see how we've all come on in just a couple of weeks, really, to be honest with you. So we're going to be talking a little bit about what AI knows about you, but more importantly, what you can do about it, and hopefully it's going to show you a different way of looking at how you can come up with some action plans that are going to change the way in which you interact with these AIs, so that at the end of the game, the objective is that your website ends up as or your brand ends up as the one that the AI recommends when your product or service is being searched for. And without repeating things that have already been said, the goal is no longer about traffic. I know Ian said it, but I had an experience myself about 3 months ago now, I wanted to build a specific machine, PC, computer, that could host my own version of AI on it. So Meta or Llama, the Facebook sort of version on my own machine. You might be able to see it behind me. And in order to do that, you've got to buy a very specific spec. So I asked all the search engine, all the AI, Google Deep Research, try and come up with the perfect spec for building a machine like that. It came up with the spec. I then used another AI to try and work out which was the closest to that spec on Amazon. I then bought the machine, and it was only after I'd spent well over £1,000 that I realized that I had not seen the website. I had no idea of, or had never heard of the brand, and there were not even any reviews of this machine because it was so unique. So that's what's happening to us now. The goal is no longer about the traffic, and the context is everything. So how do we influence it? Well, to my mind, we've talked about RAG LLMs, so the retrieval or generated search. But the idea is that the user asks a question, and the AI can start in a number of different places as to how they start coming up with an answer. So if you're thinking about, I don't know, hotels in Birmingham, it might start thinking about Birmingham and the surrounding areas first. It might start thinking about hotels first. It might start thinking about your preferences first. And then the next step might be, do you want it for a family? Do you want a pool? Whatever it may be. And so each layer of the process will go down a different neural pathway, just like our brains do, until eventually it comes out with result 1 or result 2, and it could be a different one on different days. But the interesting thing here is that we can potentially interrupt that pathway at anywhere in the point. We've seen how AIs work, and if we can build our businesses and our information architecture so that the LLMs see our brand more often in those pathways, that's going to make a difference. And that's what we think we're going to do with what AI knows about you, or really it's what AI knows about your company. So there are a lot of ways in which we can find out about what AI knows about you, and we've just had rank scale with one approach. There's others as well. Evertune, one of their approaches, I think, is to sort of run a query 6,000 times. I think it's quite an expensive way to do things. ZipTie focuses on the number of citation counts. The way that WayK is working is slightly different. It tries to create a delta between the output that you might see here. So this is an output for the Gentleman's Journal. What do you know about the Gentleman's Journal? And it comes out with some stuff. This is Google Grounded. So Grounded being a RAG search, sorry, a technical version for got a search lookup. So we've got all that information there. We know what's on the gentlemanjournal.com website. So does that match? We can then score whether the output from the AI is representative of what their business is. Now, you can see as well the sources there are coming from all sorts of different websites, only one of which is the Gentleman's Journal, which goes to Ian's point that it's no longer necessary, and actually to Mathias' point, that it's no longer just about getting content on your website. It's about being wherever the AI is looking up this information. But this means we can get these numbers and we can say, right, okay, the accuracy of the output is, and we can give a score from 0 to 100 for yourself and for your competitors across the different search engines, which is a different approach. And I think it's one that's really useful for us, because job number 1 is to get that knowledge right, to make sure that the AI gets the knowledge right. Because we've seen quite a lot that AIs hallucinate. This is an example output for Hennessy.com. Jason Hennessy runs a digital agency out of Los Angeles. And over there, he's just sold it for a lot of money, which Anne and I are very frustrated about. But there we go. But he's got all this, he's got this coming out, and he gave me permission to show this information. But instead of Hennessy being recognized as a digital marketing website, it's being noticed as a high-performance engineering US-based automotive tuning company, which is completely wrong. And also somewhere else, it's got something about cognac, because Hennessy without an E is the cognac, of course. And so a completely fabricated bit of information coming out here, which is kind of interesting, because back in the link building days, Jason Hennessy went to Hennessy Performance Engineering's website and said, hey, look, there's some potential for ambiguity here. So why don't you link and say, are you trying to find this digital marketing company? Link over here. And now it's got on the Hennessy Performance Engineering site information about a digital marketing company on their website. So these things become problematic. And so we kind of want to understand the facts that these AI machines are getting. So can we glean anything from the facts? And so the first thing that Wayk does, apart from tracking this information, is allow you to reduce all of that output into facts. So one-line facts. So we can see that Hennessy.com is the official website for Hennessy Cognac. Wrong. Flag it. Error. It's not. So we can sit there and pull these facts, take them off, and then you can take them back to your PR company or to wherever, or you can click on those little eyes to see the actual AI LLM output that produce that result, so you can maybe track it back to the source. And all sorts of things are going wrong, including my own other company, Inlinks, was apparently taken over by SEMrush at one point. No, it was a fact-checking company, a rank-checking company. It's not a rank-checking company. So, these hallucinations happen. So a quick way of being able to see this is a very useful place to try and help correct the fakes. So we had errors like Inlinks being a rank-checking company, which it wasn't. We saw that Moz Local, apparently, according to an LLM, ceased as a product in 2023, which it didn't. And then Hennessy becoming an auto-tuning site. So all these things are hallucinations which we need to try and get rid of. So job number one, check the facts and get rid of them. Check periodically as well, because there's a whole new wave of negative SEO potentially coming along, where people are going to be putting out fake facts, and we know that that's been done. I'm sorry, I've got a little thing popping up on my screen. I've tried to kill that, but never mind. Next one. Where is AI getting that knowledge from? And Mathias already talked about the sources, and we find this really, really interesting. We've just come out with some new stuff that looks at the difference between commercial intent and knowledge intent LLMs, but anyway, one thing that we have had for a while is that looking at your own data sources is one thing. Where are the LLMs getting information about you from? That's one thing. But looking at your competition and where they're getting their citations from is, I think, the new link building. Ian mentioned it as well. I think that there you can start going out and seeing that your competitors are being mentioned in these websites over here, and it's coming up in the LLM responses. Clearly, there's an opportunity there for you to interrupt the neural networks. But this gets much, much more interesting at a topic level, because at a brand level, brands are trying to be different. So Nike is trying to be different to Adidas, or I always take the example of BMW is all about the driver, and Mercedes is all about the passenger, and that's why all the taxis are Mercedes. So at a brand level, they're trying to be different. But when it comes to, I would like to buy a luxury car, they both want your business. So when you start to go to a topic of cars or footwear or things like that, then all of a sudden the topics become much, much more interesting, because you can start to see the sources of the information, and then you can also have a look at the responses as well. Hang on, where are we going? Because you can see the delta. Hang on, let me just go on here. So you can see the delta between your LLM output and your competitor's LLM output. So this is an example for Harrods in the context of watches. So what we've done here to create this knowledge graph here is we've said, right, what do you know about watches in the context of Harrods? And also with your competitors, myteresa.com and Fortnum & Mason. I might have got the competitors wrong. It's asked them as well. So the ones in blue, okay, that's kind of like the hygiene factors. They're all talking about these kind of things, but you're probably not talking about chronographs enough, or quartz or materials enough. And you're certainly not got any reviews on your website, Harrods, and that's potentially causing a problem for the LLMs. So now we've got some data where we can see what's coming out of the LLM responses and what's coming out of the competitors' LLM responses, and we can start to use that to build an action plan of what you need to do differently to have a better chance to get interrupted in the output. So this was the analysis that the tool does for this particular one on watches. And it says, right, we've got a good, Harrods has got great, strong luxury brand positioning with dedicated fine watches department pages, exclusive watch offerings like Tudor Black, etc. Whereas Selfridges, well-structured, sorry, just get rid of these. Selfridges, well-structured, gender-specific luxury watches, etc. And My Teresa, dedicated, certified, pre-owned watches section. That's kind of interesting. I wonder if there's anything we can do with that. So we can then say, well, what are the gaps in that information? So we can have a look at the content gaps, and then we can pull that into a few simple recommendations. So this has pulled it into 6 ideas, 2 content creation ideas. Firstly, Harrods might want to consider pre-owned luxury watches content. Now, of course, Harrods don't want that. But what they can do instead is explain to the user why they should be buying a new watch, not a pre-owned watches, because it's got the authenticity, it's got the guarantees, it's got all the other bits and pieces. You know, there's a lot that they can do to cover the basis of why they're not selling pre-owned watches. And I think part of the optimization trick for us as brands is to not always try and say what you do, but also say what you don't do a little bit as well. And then we've also seen that the materials, they needed to develop a comprehensive guide on which different materials. We got a couple of enhancement ideas. So fine watches, we need a verified customer review system for watches, because that's a high priority, because it's going to give you all of that trust signals. And then talk about rose gold watches and those kind of things, and a couple of structural improvements at all as well. So six sentences on how to improve Harrods output for LLM. So we tied it even down into sort of 6 sentences like that. You can just give that to, a content developer, and off they go, and then they go and impact it. So gone are the days of 100-page SEO audits. We can really get things down to 6 sentences, and this is what we need to do, which I think is kind of interesting. And like Mathias, the sources of this information, if there's competitors being mentioned, Selfridges being mentioned on allreviews.ca, or Selfridges also being on the jewelryeditor.com, we can then surface that information and say, go out and investigate those, try and get your brand on those kind of websites as well. So that's it. I didn't want to take too much of your time. But in conclusion, really, Wake is all about trying to understand the AI knowledge, improve that AI accuracy, and then leverage that AI to your advantage. And that's it. I'm done.
Thank you so much, Dixon. As usual, brilliant presentation. So if I can get all the panel back, please, if you are there. Just waiting for... Yeah, everybody's back. Okay, so first of all, I think we're going around the room and just like to sort of, we'll start with Ian and sort of sum up what you've learned from today and how you think people what would be your first tips on how people should get started with all of this. So first of all, sort of sum up anything that you've learned from the others in addition to your own presentation, and then what would you recommend would be the first way to get people on the GSO, GEO ladder?
Who's going to start?
Yeah. Are you speaking? Are you?
It was you.
Can't hear you. Is your mic on?
My mic, yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. There you are. There's a bit of a delay on the line.
Okay, no worries. Where would I start? Apart from trying to seed user-generated content and review sites with information about me in preference to my competitors, I would definitely look at informational content on the website, which you may well already have, depending what your SEO strategy has been up to this point, and work on that as much as possible in order to be cited for as wide a variety of queries and to turn up in as many different query fan out scenarios as you might get. And I think that the citations thing is the other important bit, which again isn't really that different to what you would probably have been doing for SEO anyway, which is I want to be mentioned on these websites, except traditionally you'd want links from those websites. Now maybe the link won't make that much difference in AI specifically, but you still need to be cited, and it needs to be cited in context. So this is the old thing with links, where do you want links from anywhere because PageRank is just a number, or do you want links from contextually relevant places because maybe there's some sort of PageRank filter, which is if you've got a link from a random site that's nothing to do with yours, should it really count? In citations, that's much clearer. You don't want to be cited in places that are not relevant, because that might confuse the system. What you do need for authority in that subject and to be cited and to be featured in the output more regularly is to be cited in the context of what you're talking about as relevant to that topic and those entities. So I'd be looking for that. I'd be thinking about what does my sort of PR type activity look like in that respect. I'd be looking at, are there paid ways to do that? The old advertorially type things, which, traditionally from an SEO perspective are almost always more expensive than the value they bring. But from this context, maybe they are now worth more to be cited in the right places. But then I'd want to know that they're the right places. And this goes to something that, Dixon's been talking about. And I know, was it your daughter, Dixon, that wrote that piece you published yesterday?
Sorry, what was that?
Was it your daughter that wrote the piece that was published yesterday on your site?
It was, yeah. SEO has gone in the blood, yeah.
Yeah. And she was talking about, the way to essentially over a period of time generate data from these outputs and see what most commonly occurs. And that's not just, in terms of queries and entities and stuff, but also what sources are being cited, because those are your targets to get cited in. And I think that's quite an important thing to be considering in the very near future, if not already, for most people concerned with SEO.
Can I just ask you a question about the very near future? Because obviously with the LLMs, I'm not sure what the frequency they're being updated. The guys might know. Is it 6 months, 12 months, the main LLMs?
Well, it seems to be varying a little bit between the different engines, and they seem to be going on stops and starts. But I mean, Mathias may have different data to me, but it's as soon as there's a live search lookup, then it becomes very difficult to say because the RAG search is influenced.
Exactly what the point. That's exactly the point that I was going to say. It's quite difficult for you to actually know whether you're in the LLM or they're just relying on the live search.
Yeah, which is why on our tool we on Gemini particularly we do two lookups. One, you can stop the search lookup on Gemini in the API. So we do two search lookups, one where we ban them from looking at the internet and one where they do it. So we've got the comparison.
Okay. That's really useful to know, because I think one of the issues is if you're working on GSO now, you're working for something that could be 6 months ahead, I think was the point that I was trying to make. And also if you're working in SEO, then that's going to impact the RAG side of things. Okay, let's go over to James next. What based on what you've heard today and what you were already working on, what would you advise? What would be the first thing you would advise a client in the case of Anicca as an agency offering this as a service, or even doing it for ourselves?
Yeah, well, I really am pretty convinced that the citations are really important, because obviously eventually those citations could potentially flow through into the main LLM or large language model. But I think they're also really important due to the RAG crawls, which are initiated by various AI platforms and agents. So in the instance that, an AI platform performs, an active search to find information, there are certain sites and destinations for that rag crawl that they're more likely to go to and check for certain pieces of information or citations than other places. So I think it's really interesting because like it's kind of like the guys have been saying, but it's like in a way it's kind of like almost reset the clock on some link building techniques, because whereas Google is, you know, if you consider Google without Gemini, without AI overviews, without all of that stuff, and you just think about Google as being the traditional search engine in the links list, it gives very simplistic responses, but is very algorithmically sophisticated at the crawl level. But a lot of the emerging AI platforms like Claude and ChatGPT and stuff like that, they're exactly the opposite way around. They give very sophisticated responses, but at the crawl level, they're algorithmically pretty dumb. And because of they are, and because of they and this is what Dixon was pointing out when he was saying, you know, sometimes it will go out and rag and it will pull back, you know, like someone's Reddit post or something and treat it as fact. They are not as algorithmically sophisticated at that particular level. So I would certainly consider, you know, picking up a platform like WayK or like Rank Scale AI, doing some analysis to determine, you know, the actual sources of certain citations, and then potentially looking to kind of build out links in those areas. I think it has reset the clock on some activities that in SEO.
That's really interesting, James, because what you've done is you've jumped to the solution straight away. And in your normal way that you would answer me, or I'd expect to answer you, say, well, I need to know the size of the problem first. Which is one of the reasons why we've been talking about these guys, because if you measure it, you've no idea whether you're successful or not. I mean, and you created your own spreadsheet, OpenAI, API, Python-driven crawler yourself 2 years ago, didn't you? Or something like that, year and a half ago. Before we realized it was much too complicated and we needed to buy something that somebody that knows what they were doing would do it. But I mean, my view on that is that you need to understand what you're being found for. And it was really going back to that diagram. You need to measure it, know what people are, what the type of entities and type of prompts that they're searching for. And then that's really where we get over to Mathias and Dixon. But I think you want to say something else before we go over to Mathias.
I was going to say, the measurement, I did say it a bit topsy-turvy, didn't I? But yeah, the measurement and the platforms like WayK and Rank Scale, they kind of come first. But then obviously drilling into that data to see, you know, why were we cited? You know, the AI was referring to these certain sources. That's where we need to be. It's really important, I think. So.
Okay, we start to lose a lot of people at 11 o'clock. So before we go over to Mathias and Dixon, I'm just going to ask people to give us a review. So if you have enjoyed today, please give us a review. Talk about how we sort of as a team understand about AI overviews. If you particularly liked one of the talks, you can give that a little bit of a mention as well. But it's very useful for us when we're trying to convince customers that we vaguely know what we're talking about, particularly as we've got some commercial training coming along in the future. So Mathias, over to you, and then we're finished with Dixon. You've always got something really interesting. Both of you have really got interesting things to say. So Mathias, what would you like to add to the conversation, and what would you suggest that people do first to get going?
I think what I want to add is that it's important to understand that when AI searches actually present a response with citation links where you can actually click on to go to a certain source, they are sending users not the same way as Google did, you know, just to research something. They have already researched, and they are sending the users with a much higher intent to actually buy something or get something. That means that the conversion rates are completely different and much higher. That's the first thing I wanted to say. I did not mention that. And the second thing is, I think there was a question regarding which LinkedIn elements have been referenced in the citations and which are important. It's both, it's articles and it's posts. And also there was a question regarding Copilot, if it's important or not.
Yes, I was going to just ask you about that one. I thought you might be able to add some value on Copilot and Bing.
Yeah, I think it's pretty interesting and important, but as most people tend to use ChatGPT or GPT-4 over Copilot and Bing directly. We currently focus on that, but it's not a big issue to actually integrate it in rank scale.
Brilliant. Dixon, what would you like to add?
You're muted, Dixon.
Yeah, that's.
I don't want. You know, the only thing I think I can add that maybe just sort of adding new content, because we're kind of, you know, the citation seems to be a large part of the findings of today. One of the things that we actually launched it this week actually, but we found some very interesting analysis when we differentiate the commercial prompts. So things like says, you know, how, you know, what's the best flight to fly to New York from, is a very different kind of response and cites different kinds of websites than if you say, what do you know about British Airways in relation to New York, or what do you know about Air France in relation to New York? And so it turns out that the data sources seem to be very materially different. So we've started to break those out so that you can start to see the difference between citations on commercial intent versus citations on knowledge understanding, if you like. And I think you kind of need the knowledge understanding ones for the AIs to understand your brand properly. And then you probably still need to be on the third party kind of review sites for you to be able to pop up as the best place to go for the ticket to New York.
Can I add something to that? Because nobody's mentioned it really. I can tell you guys all come from an SEO background and not a paid background. I think the future of organic traffic, search traffic, is going to be even worse once the ads start going into the AI overviews and also in AI mode, because it's all very well them producing 0 clicks, but they actually want to make money. And the only way that Google's going to make money is if somebody clicks on an ad, unless they go to more of a banner impression-based model. So I think that's a really important point that's going to have, and we don't really see that many ads within the UK AI overviews at the moment. And I don't know how that would change with the AI mode once that comes over. And the second thing is the real commercial stuff of what Ian was talking about. And that's where agents go to e-commerce websites. But also ChatGPT has done a deal with Shopify to actually include their content within the ChatGPT results. So I think that's going to change the mechanics a lot, the dynamics a lot as well. Because at the moment, generally AI overviews doesn't come up if there's a load of shopping ads at the top. I don't know whether Ian can add anything to this from his work that he's doing at the door at the Vibrant. But yeah, so I think there's some other elements that we're not even considering. But it looks like traditional SEO is going to be sort of pushed out of existence. And I did some research with SimilarWeb where I'm tracking 50 agencies, and the 50 agencies overall, their traffic halved in April, pretty much, even though search volumes were going up as the changes happened. And although there could be some changes to the way that SimilarWeb are reporting, that report that came out yesterday seems to concur that the way that the results are showing and the AI overviews that our agency world has been significantly hit by a massive drop of traffic. So I didn't know whether, Ian, you just wanted to have a final word on paid. Have you seen any paid ads very much in the AI work that you've been doing?
I've seen examples from the States that people have spotted. I haven't seen anything clever yet. So I've seen ads within the stuff, but they're the same ads, you know. Google had a demo last year at some point where you took a photo. The demo was you were looking for storage space for something. So you clicked on the ad and then it said, right, take some photos of what you want to store. So you photoed a bed, photoed a sofa, that kind of stuff. And it had an idea of the size of those things from the photos and then automatically suggested what size of storage space you needed and gave you the options. And that was their demo. And that obviously uses AI within the ads platform to do that. It was native, you know, it wasn't sending you off to the website to do that. So I'm sure they've got things like that in the pipeline. And yeah, monetization, as Dixon will tell you from the chap you spoke to at Microsoft, was it Dixon? that clearly, you know, that's somebody's whole job, trying to work out how to monetize these things. But to me, it seems fairly obvious on one score. You know, on the shopping front, you will either make your money from the clicks on the ads still of the pretty pictures of products, or you will make your money by the agentic capability and probably forcing people to use GPay and taking your cut off the top of that anyway. So yeah, that's how you do it. So I don't, yeah, it's going to be interesting to see how that develops. But I think fundamentally, as it stands, if you take the agentic bit out of it, I want to buy something, I need to get in touch with that company, I need a service provided, will require you to go to the website of the business, and therefore people will be willing to pay for those clicks because there's a value in it. And so I don't think that's going to change terribly.
Yeah. I mean, there's a couple of other developments which I think I'd just like to finish off with. So first of all, Perplexity advertised about 6 months ago that they were going to do like a marketplace and shopping ads, but I've not seen that in the UK. I don't know whether that's happened in the States. And then the other thing that I wanted to make everybody aware of is just how good Claude was. And interestingly, Claude has now got live search access. So one of the disadvantages of Claude up until about a month ago was it didn't have internet access, and now it does. And the outputs from Claude is really, really good, much better than ChatGPT. So if I was recommending a chat engine now, I'd actually recommend Claude, paid Claude, because also the projects are really good as well, which is like a custom GPT. The only disadvantage with that is you can't share those Claude projects at the moment to external people. But if internally, they're amazing. Anyway, also, we better break up. I have absolutely no idea what's next week. It will be another epic special. Apologies for not getting prepped in advance for that. So have a look on the website. I will go and turn off the live now. I didn't turn it on in time, so I'm sure we missed a little bit of it at the beginning. But we live and learn. But thank you so much, everybody, for being involved today. And it's been great having you on. And if you'd just like to put your email addresses in, that would be great. And so that everybody can contact you if they're interested in using your product or finding out more about your services, or if they want to buy some doors. So thanks, guys.
There's only one.
Thank you very much. Cheers. Thanks. Bye-bye.
Cheers, everybody.
Bye. Bye-bye.
Have a great day. Ciao, ciao.
Thanks, everybody. That was really good.
Okay.
Hope you enjoyed it.
Thanks, guys.
I'm just going to end the
Thanks, Mathias.
presentation.
Yeah, your tool looks
Bye.
good. You've got a contest in there.
Thank you so much. Bye-bye.
See you guys.
Ciao.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Cheers all.